And welcome everybody to another episode of the Most Important Conversations. We're so happy to have you here. September, how are you doing today?
Oh, fantastic. I
Good
shared
to hear.
recently that this is patio weather here in Florida, and it's just been perfect getting into nature and to being able
Mm,
to sit out there comfortably and
yeah,
just enjoy all of that. It's very charging, I would say. I feel very
I know
charged.
exactly what you're talking about. I
Yeah,
remember when I lived in Las Vegas, this was the time of year when everyone was sitting outside on the patio. And it's very different from my years living in Canada because this is not patio season in the northern part of the country or of
absolutely
Canada.
not.
So, yeah,
Yeah, absolutely
um,
not. So I feel charged. I feel good.
good.
Yeah,
Excellent.
yeah. How are you feeling?
I'm pretty good today. I feel like I'm coming down with a bit of a cold, but I'm kind of pressing through it. And, I'm not going to let it take me out. So maybe I just need a little bit of rest. But all in all, I feel good. I'm very excited about life and about where we're headed with everything that we're working on right now, and excited to be, as always, working with you and sharing in these very informative conversations that hopefully will help elevate and open some possibility for people. So I'm curious what you've got on your mind today.
Oh, I have architecture environment on my mind,
Mm,
heavily on my mind.
I don't think that's a song Billy Joel would have sang, but nevertheless.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's come up in conversation with you several times, and I'm
Yeah.
having my own personal environment experience of, being more aware of my environment. That
Hmm.
obviously takes a self-awareness to be aware of your environment.
Sure.
And is it supporting you? Which leads me to what you've been talking about, that you're actually thinking about moving because your current environment is not supporting you any longer.
Yeah. Yeah. And that happens probably to most people, throughout life. I mean, you get into one environment, um, and it serves you, or you think it serves you at that moment in time. But then the longer you're there, and you're growing and you're evolving, it kind of reminds me of, for spiritual or religious people will really appreciate this. You can read the Bible, or you could read the Torah or the Quran or the Bhagavad Gita or any of these books that have been around for thousands of years, and they haven't changed. But it seems that every time you read it, or any text really, it doesn't have to be a religious text. Anytime you read a text that, say, is really rich and is vibrant and has a lot of meaning for you, if you read it, one time and then a year later you reread it again, somehow it occurs to you as totally different. Like the experience of it is totally different. And that's because you've changed. Your experiences have changed. Your worldview may have changed. Your perceptual filter through which you're interpreting the information has changed. And so it's always fresh. You get something new out of it. Well, our environment, the environment we live in, that also we have that same experience. So one year we might be living in an environment, living in a house, let's say, and it totally aligns with who we are. It checks all of the boxes, fits exactly what it is that fills us up, makes us feel content or peaceful or empowered or whatever the experience is. And then a year will go by, 2 years go by, suddenly maybe it's not doing that for you anymore. And it actually is becoming a detractor of your energy, and it becomes cumbersome and it becomes baggage. And it doesn't just have to be, when we talk about architecture and environment, it's not just your house.
Mhm.
It could be the car that you drive, the clothes that you wear, the people that you hang out with. When we talk about architecture and environment in the TMIC work, we're talking about actually four different architectures. There's the physical architecture, there's the emotional architecture, there's the cognitive architecture, the life of our mind, as Hannah Arendt said, our thoughts. And then there's the spiritual or the metaphysical architecture. And these four architectures all constitute what it is that or who we end up becoming as a human being. They constitute our beingness, right? And so paying attention to these architectures is so, so critical. And like you just said, it requires a certain amount of awareness, because oftentimes we just kind of feel like we have the architecture we have. We live where we live. We have our car. We wear the clothes that we wear. We hang out with the people we hang out with. We think the thoughts that we think. We feel the emotions we feel, and we can't do anything about it. But that's not true. We have all the power in the world to be the creators of our experience and our existence, and to re-architect our lives by design, so we're not living a life by default. And so, yes, I'm thinking that the architecture, the physical space in which I'm currently living, is no longer of service to me. And so I'm already redirecting my intention and my attention to what is that architecture that I want to create? Where is it? Who will be a part of it and participate in it? And so I'm in that creative space right now.
I can see how that space isn't serving you any longer. You're very different. Your beingness has shifted so much in the 3 years that you and I have been working this closely together.
Yeah.
It's really been magical to watch that, be on the outside of it. As you're talking, it's making me reminded me of when my husband passed away. I thought, let me join some widow groups, just talk to people that understand the journey of losing a spouse. And it was fine for the first week, maybe. But then I started noticing some things about how people weren't grieving their spouse that they just lost. They're grieving their spouse that they lost 10 years ago. And the items that their husband or wife had sitting on the table, their shoes, their clothes, is still in the same space after 10 years. And they're stuck in this loop of, my spouse has left me, I'm so alone, and replaying that trauma, replaying that trauma. And that's when I knew I had to exit the group. That's not how I navigate through grief. And when Bernie was here, he would say to me, he goes, I don't want you to leave my things where I left them, because that's not where I'm at. I want you to release those things immediately after I die, so that you're not stuck there, because you're not going to find me in those things. Right. It was very tough. Oh, it was so hard to release your spouse's items the same week they passed away. But that's what he instructed me to do. And I didn't get it until I was on the other side of it. I'm like, oh, because for that week that his clothes were still hanging in the closet, I would find myself there smelling them just to get that scent of him back and to get that feeling of connectedness. But it was just keeping me stuck.
So you actually cleaned house within the first week?
I cleaned house. This is going to sound a little crazy to you, but everybody in my family I have an agreement with. When you die and when you cross over, you've got to communicate with me somehow to let me know that you've made it there okay. And my grandmother did, my father did, and my husband did. And in that line of communication, it was like one sentences that I would hear. I woke up, the third day I woke up, he says, you need to clean out my nightstand. That's all I heard. I got this gut push to clean out the nightstand. I'm like, okay, knowing the conversations that we had. So that was easy to do, the nightstand. All right, cleared all that out. Next day was clean out the bathroom vanity. The next day was to clean out a dresser. And then the fourth day, which was exactly 1 week from his passing on a Thursday, I had to clean out his closet.
Wow.
And I just felt that intuitive push, whether he was communicating, regardless of what you believe, I felt that he was communicating to me. And given the previous conversations that we had, he was setting me up to make sure that I could grow in this huge shift in your life. Yeah. Your whole world is flipped upside down. And he didn't want me stuck in that. And I didn't get it. And then through the work of doing with TMIC and understanding architecture and environment, I'm like, that is so powerful to be so aware of your environment. What are the things that's keeping you stuck in a loop of trauma or pain or grief or whatever that is, and including office spaces as well, too. Like everything has to change when you change, and having that self-awareness is just, I mean, that's the foundation of it all.
Yeah. Yeah. One of our TMIC partners, Rob Evans, he says this thing all the time, which I really, really like. He says, everything speaks, right? Yes. Everything is speaking all the time. We just have to be able to listen to it. And, what comes up for me when I listen to your story there is that the physical space that we inhabit is actually, and that we surround ourselves with. I mean, it's a choice, right? It's a choice where you live. 100%. It's a choice to buy the things that you buy, the clothes you wear, et cetera. You're making choices. No one's forcing you to buy those things or to spend time in those environments. So you're choosing it. And so the outer world that we experience is, we're not victims to it. We are the choice makers and the creators of it. We create that context for ourselves. And so the outer world is really a reflection of our inner world, the state of our inner world. And so for people who get really attached to their things and have difficulty letting these things go, whether it's in the context of, like in your case, a death and a grievance process that you have to go through, or whether there's no one who's died, it's just an attachment because, well, I've always had that thing, or it reminds me of this memory or whatever. But if you think about that, you're keeping yourself stuck in the past, meaning you are not allowing yourself to grow. The thing is that as human beings, we're meaning making machines, and we really love our stories. We really love the attachments and the stories we wrap around our attachments. And we feel as though like our very identity is wrapped up in the attachments we have to our things. And yet the thing is that just holds you back from creating a new future. It keeps you trapped and stuck in the past. There's no way that you're going to be able to move forward. So then we find ourselves as human beings in this weird conundrum. And the conundrum is, gee, I really wish this would happen, or I really want to do this in my life, but you got all this attachment over here to the people, places, and things of your past. It's like, I love Marshall Goldsmith's, classic saying, what got you here won't get you there. And so the here of this moment, where you live, who you hang out with, what you think about, your emotional state, these are all architectures that have constructed this very moment that you find yourself in. And it worked to get you here. But now if you're imagining a different future, imagining a different result, imagining a different outcome, you're going to have to transform yourself. The what got you here won't get you there. So what do you transform? The architecture of your life. You transform the physical architecture, the emotional architecture, the cognitive architecture, the spiritual or metaphysical architecture. You transform your being. And because you transform your being, that new being will produce a different outer world experience. The being that you are produce the experience you have. The being that you need to become will produce the experience that you desire. And the only thing that's in your way of that is your attachment to the old stuff that got you to this moment. And so that's probably why your husband knew this, because he was a very forward-thinking person and didn't want you to be trapped in the past, because it's not going to forward anything for you.
Correct. I wholeheartedly believe that. So you said, going back to what you're saying about everything speaks, what would you say that your environment is speaking to you right now? And what do you want your environment to speak when you move to that new environment?
My environment is speaking to me right now. I guess it feels small to me. It feels constricting. It feels like I'm wanting to grow much bigger and have much more impact than this environment will allow me to. And so the grow into the environment that I'm seeking to create is one that is tied to our vision of everything that we're doing with the recreation centers and with Design Shop and Design Lab and getting out into the world. I think another way to look at it, the environment that I have served me well during these last few years with COVID. We were all insular. We were all sort of stuck inside, and isolated. But I have this real desire and sense to expand and to grow. And it's almost like COVID was like this sort of compressed moment where it was like a seed, that was being germinated and born. And now that seed wants to expand out of the ground with its leaves and the flowers and it, show itself. And so I feel this environment is speaking smallness and confinement and safety, I guess, because keeping a small life is safe. There's no risk in it.
Sure.
But that doesn't fill me up. I'm all about the risk, putting yourself out there, challenging yourself, pushing right to the edge of what you think is possible, and then realizing there's way more possible than I even thought, so I can keep going.
Yeah, this ties into a conversation I was having with a friend recently where she says, know your season. You were in a season of kind of inhaling before the exhale. You were in a season of focused creation, of really having your head down and focusing on creation. And now that creation is starting to take root, that environment can't contain the thing that you're creating now. And so knowing your season, I think, is really critical. But again, it's all about self-awareness. You have to know what season you're in.
You've got to, and you've got to be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
You've got to listen to yourself. This is where the emotional sobriety piece comes in. It always comes back to that, right?
That one. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Because listening to our emotions. So my emotions I have emotions of discontent. I have emotions of, sometimes I have emotions of impatience. Sometimes I have emotions of, well, it's not fear. It's the overcoming of fear. Actually, it's like, I'm not even seeing the fear. It's like, let's go. I don't know what you would call that emotion, but so there's these emotions that we all have, and you've got to listen to them. If you're feeling if we're experiencing what we call negative emotions, it means there's something out of alignment. They're not actually negative, incidentally. There's no such thing as a negative or a positive emotion. Our emotions are wise, providing wise insights into how aligned or unaligned our life is. And when our life is not aligned, we have to look at the architecture of our life. What's not working? What's unaligned with who we are? And so my emotions are telling me my physical environment is not aligned with what I'm creating and where I'm going in the world. There are things that are aligned. Mm-hmm. The people I'm hanging out with right now are very aligned with me, and they're calling me to a bigger existence. And the physical environment in which I'm living is not that.
Energetic.
You've got to have the awareness, like you said.
Yes, yes. And to clarify, it doesn't have the energetic support, not necessarily the structure support. So you're not saying I need to live in a mansion. You're saying I need to live in a space that I feel expansive in. Yes. Yeah.
Well, and what's a funny little inside joke is, Tara, my wife, always says all the time, she's like, wherever you walk around, there's at least like a 10 to 20 foot energy radius around you. Like, you take up so much space. So I might need a mansion, but I'm not saying I need it. I'm just saying the energy I'm putting off right now is too big for the space I'm currently in.
That makes sense.
And so we're going to be solving that problem in 2024.
Well, the last thing I want to say here is that when you were talking about our emotions and how they're an indicator system, it's not just the indicator system of our external environments and what's aligned with relationship and that sort of thing, but it's also an indicator of what you believe is out of alignment. Right. So if you're triggered by something, that's because you have a belief system that needs to adjust and evolve and grow into who you really are and how you show up in the world today, not how you learned how to survive back when you were 12.
Yeah.
So it's the indicator of also that the alignment of what our belief systems are. I think that's really powerful as well, too.
Yeah. So we've got to have some insights and some self-awareness about what our belief systems are. And that's the work that we do inside of the TMIC workshops, and really challenge everyone who goes through those workshops to press on this, because you can have the life that you want. You can experience and create anything you want. We are all our own either limiting factors, or we are all our own growth factors. We get to determine who we're going to be. None of us are victims. And unless we choose to be a victim, and that too is also a choice.
Right. So, I totally agreed.
Yeah.
This has been a great conversation.
With that, I know we've got to wrap it up here. This was a great episode of The Most Important Conversations, and stay with us as we have more of these in the coming days and weeks. I'm sure you'll find a lot of value out of this, and we hope to see you in some of our workshops and other courses and programs along the way. But until then, any final words, September?
No final words. This was rich.
Okay, awesome. Thanks everyone for joining. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.
That concludes this episode of The Most Important Conversations. This in-depth conversation could set you on the path to self-improvement, which is essential if you want to be an effective leader and take meaningful action in your life. If you enjoyed this episode and want more of these stimulating discussions, you can find them at tmicglobal.com. Remember, the world is at a crossroads right now. You can't afford to waste this opportunity to take charge of your life, build meaningful relationships with others, and co-create a brighter tomorrow. Thank you for listening. See you on the next one.